Produced by Podcast Architects.
You're listening to the Lead On podcast, where we discuss experiences in the armed forces while exploring lessons from military leaders.
Welcome to another edition of Lead On, Lessons from Military Leader. We're a podcast from the Enlisted Leadership Foundation where we talk to different military leaders about their leadership experience, what they got out of their time in the service, some currently serving, and how that can be used while you're in uniform or for a civilian who never served themselves. Today I'm joined with General Dan Conley. Dan is a recent retired, although Marines never retire, so I should say he's a former Marine officer, just completed 34 years of active duty. General, good morning.
Good morning, David. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to spend a few minutes and just sharing with us today.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate what you and the foundation do, so I'm more than happy to be here.
Well, thanks. So, historically, we like to start our show with just kind of a fun question. So, everybody, when they first start working or somewhere in their journey of employment, some boss gives them a piece of advice. And there's always going to be some piece of advice that's pretty bad, pretty horrible. What's the worst piece of advice that someone ever gave you?
Probably as a young first lieutenant working for a friend of mine. We were lieutenants together, then he got promoted to captain, and we were set to deploy. And he told me with my platoon at the time, don't ever apologize or don't ever acknowledge a mistake. When you do that, it shows weakness, and as a lieutenant, weakness is not good. He was not a very good leader. He was promoted, ironically enough, but the idea of never acknowledging a problem, continue to press, don't say anything, and expect that because you're the senior, folks are just going to fall in line and keep going. And what I've learned over time, I think, is not necessarily to say that you're weak, but just to acknowledge, hey, I screwed that one up. I missed that, or I didn't see that. I think people appreciate, authenticity and people being genuine, and I think it makes you a better leader.
Dan, I couldn't agree more. And I think we do a great job in the military of learning how and teaching how to be a positional leader. But it's like what you talk about just now, being a humble leader, somebody that it's just fess up to where you may have missed it. Everybody can learn from it. But you and I served, in the 80s and 90s, and back then this humble leadership, being authentic, as you said, that just really wasn't in vogue. It was oftentimes, I'm the chief, I'm the first lieutenant, you're junior to me. Doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong, you're going to execute the orders that I
Sure.
give.
And I think we're, whether it's the military or society writ large, it comes and goes and things are in fad and things fall out of favor. But a lot of, I think, the leadership that I learned was from growing up with my parents and my family. I knew my father was in charge of our family. Everybody knew that, but he didn't. I cannot remember a single time where he ever said, because I'm the dad, that's why. He always, whatever his decisions were, you understood where it was coming from. Might not have liked it, but he would be happy to say, you know what, I missed that. I didn't see that, or I didn't understand it. So we were just very genuine in that respect.
Yeah, I think it's John Maxwell that I heard say once, if a leader has to tell you that they're the leader, then they're not the leader.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, we so when we had a conversation earlier, we started exploring this idea when it comes to leadership topics of luck. What role does luck play in the life of a leader? So I thought as a way to expound on this or I want to say tear it apart, but that's not the phrase I'm thinking of. Anyways, when you
unpack it a little bit.
Pardon me?
Unpack it a little bit.
Unpack it. That's it. I wanted to unpack that. Thank you. See, got to have those general officers to keep us when you're listed in line sometimes, or sometimes the other way around. So, what was it that drove you into the Marines and kept you in the Marines?
So my parents were both in the military. My father was in the Army and my mother was in the Navy. I have 5 older brothers and sisters, and 3 of us, for whatever reason, decided we were going to go in the military, and 3, it was the furthest thing from their mind. As the youngest of 6, I figured out early on that my parents probably weren't going to be able to pay for college. So I looked up and found this thing called the Naval Academy and managed to get in. And while I was there, I was very fortunate to have a series of company officers over 4 years. I had 4 different ones, 2 Navy, 2 Marines. And I was just impressed by just how the Marines dealt with us as midshipmen who sometimes act more like probably lance corporals and, third class petty officers. Very intelligent, but can get into some mischief every once in a while. And I appreciated how they dealt with us and how they led us through all the stuff that we had to do through school. So that's, I think, really why, the main reason I went into the Marine Corps. It also didn't help that I got seasick on ships, so that was not really a starter for me.
So, speaking of mischief, any mischief in your early career that where you got lucky, where it could have ended up pretty bad, but luck prevented that?
Yeah. So as a second lieutenant, in my first platoon on a night machine gun shoot, we were going to do everything right, and I was going to have everything ready to go. And my platoon sergeant and I sat out, and I opened every single one of the flares that was in the case so that we'd be able to do the correct procedures right on time and everything else. And it turns out, as we launched the first one and it landed, it lit the range on fire, and they told us to shut the whole thing down. So we were left with an almost complete fully box of flares. And the next day, my platoon sergeant said, "Hey, sir, I got a way to get rid of these." But I don't advocate for this. I, having been a base commander, don't ever do this. But we managed to secure a range legally, and then we popped as many of the flares into the air at one time as we could, knowing that when the first one landed, it was going to catch fire, and that lit the range on fire, which then started to spread. And my platoon sergeant, I told him, go make sure that you check in with range control. So he left and he came back and he was trying to tell me something. I said, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Just, I'm watching my career go up in flames as the fire goes and expands over a couple different ridge lines. And I left the range and reported to my battalion commander, knowing that that was the end of Second Lieutenant Conley's career. I was going to be the next stupid lieutenant story at the basic school for what not to do on a machine gun range. Well, it turns out, yes, we did light the range on fire, but I had the sheer dumb luck of the Camp Pendleton Fire Department doing a controlled burn the exact same day. So the other ranges that were burning were not as a result of what I did, but it was as a result of what the fire department had planned, and mine just kind of fell into it. So my battalion commander gave me a good dressing down for being an idiot with flares, both in the opening and how we tried to dispose of them. But told me, did you learn your lesson? Oh, absolutely, General or Colonel. I certainly did. And it so went on from there. But yes, lucky and dodged a bullet.
Dodged the bullet, yeah. And I think whether somebody serves 4 years or 40 years, I think luck is always part of the equation. And it may be dumb luck, that kind of like that guy that gave the worst piece of advice. It may be that dumb luck that you didn't follow it, right? Or the dumb luck that nobody really knows about. And it's like, man, I dodged that bullet. I want to make sure that I don't make that mistake again, and hopefully prevent other people. You know what? So you're married. You have 3 daughters. How does luck, or does luck, as a leader, as you move up the hierarchy, how does luck play into life in the military family and that dynamics when it comes to duty stations and responsibility? Because just like any job, the higher we move up, the more responsibility we have, and the harder we have to work. So families do kind of take a a backseat sometimes, unfortunately.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we talk about it a lot in the military about, the value of the family and how important they are and those kind of things. But as you point out, when it gets right down to it, the mission is what we're going to do. So families are very understanding a lot of the times of why you can't be somewhere, or not this month, but next month we'll do it, or next year, or things that are missed. With my family, we were serving in Florida. I was a colonel, and we were having some. My oldest daughter was having some challenges, nothing huge, but just enough to make us pause. And my wife and I said, well, if we continue to serve, if by sheer dumb luck I'm selected for general, I don't know that I can do what I think the Marine Corps requires as a general officer and be the father I need to be for my daughter, particularly if she's having some challenges. So I requested not to be considered for promotion. I took my name off the list, and my wife and I decided that we were going to retire, and we were happy with the decision. It was literally a family decision. It was not either one of us forcing one thing or the other, and we managed to work through some of the issues, most of the issues with my daughter. And my wife said, I think I can do one more tour. We don't necessarily need to retire yet. So I called up a friend in California and said, hey, I'd love to come back to Camp Pendleton, and I'll be your chief of staff, and it's where my wife is from. And it was all good. We were fixing to head to California, and I was going to retire out of the place where I started my career. And about, a month or so later, I got a call from the commandant, and he said, you've been selected for general. And I kind of, it took me a while to process what he was telling me. So I called my wife and I said, hey, we've been selected. And she said, are you sure they know it's you? This is not a mistake. There's only one Dan Conley. So we did verify it was me. A little while later, I got told, hey, you're going to be assigned to the commanding general of 2nd Marine Logistics Group in North Carolina. So my wife and I went up and we did the turnover, and then all the change of command invites were going out, and we were about a month out. And I got another phone call, and they said, hey, you're not going to North Carolina, you're going to Okinawa. I said, what are you talking about? Invitations are already out. It's in the mail. They said, yeah, that's not interesting. You're doing Okinawa in 2 weeks. So I left my family. I flew over. My wife, God bless her, and the girls packed up the house. I flew back and met them 5 weeks later. And we all flew over and started our tour in Okinawa. So I guess I would say it is not a lot of folks get selected to general. I know there's a lot of folks who could be sitting in this chair instead of me. But when it came right down to it, my family and I decided, hey, we're gonna look after the family, and we did, and it still worked out in the end anyway. So I would say there was a healthy dose of luck in that.
I just think, there's luck from a perspective of what I'm hearing you saying is there are career paths in the military, both in the officer and the enlisted side. There's career milestones. There's certain wickets, whether it's a position or a rotation, things like that, that is looked for when you go to a selection board. It's clearly you didn't get selected just, who's this? Let's draw a name out of a hat. We'll take Dan Conley. Come on down. No, clearly your leadership, the successes of those that worked with you and that you led, you accomplished a great deal. So it's not, I don't want to lessen the significance of it, but I think if we look back to being that humble leader, the motivation wasn't to get promoted. The motivation is to execute the mission, be successful, and come home with everybody that you left with. But then you also, I think of timing. I think of the like in the Navy, we have a seashore rotation, at least, and I'll speak from a listed perspective. And I had a chief petty officer years, I think I was an E5, shore duty. And I had one of these informal, now they're formal career development boards. But back then it was informal. I can remember standing in a parking lot behind the building. And this chief started talking to me, and he just shared. He says, in your career, whatever you do, don't go to the same type of ship twice, and just make sure you maintain a seashore rotation. Simple enough. And I did. And then, once I made Master Chief and I sat selection boards, and I could see the value of timing, not because somebody charted it that way, but just the luck of when they got promoted. So, so I'll throw back at you. How important is timing, or how does timing play into the luck when it comes to whether it's a promotion, a job, or even the time to get out?
I am firmly believe I'm a product of luck, skill, and timing. So some of the skill that I have, I got from my parents. I'm able to run, so I've always had a good PFT. And I've worked at it. It's not like I sat back and ate donuts and then expected to run a good PFT. It's genetically, though, that's just what I'm disposed to do. There are timing issues. I completely agree. As a second lieutenant, I went to my basic log officer course, and out of that course, 3 of us got assigned to Camp Pendleton. So we all drive from Little Creek, Virginia, where the school was, out to Camp Pendleton. And we arrived at 3 different times. The first guy that ended up being my roommate ended up going to a battalion and he never deployed. The second one checked in. He ended up going to the headquarters, never deployed. I show up, the third of 3, because I'm not that quick, and I end up going to a battalion. And from that, I deployed multiple times. That was my first combat deployments. I deployed to Somalia. The officers and Marines out of that, I can count more colonels, generals, sergeants majors, and master gunnery sergeants from that tour and that battalion. So it wasn't, they didn't look at me and go, hey, we're holding a space for Conley. It was, I was the third dude to show up, and they went, okay, that's where you're going. And it was one of the best things, really, it started off my career. But, fast forward 20 plus years and I'm a colonel, or lieutenant colonel rather, and I show up to my colonel command and I get this, I bought a house, and the day I was moving into my house, I get a call from the chief of staff, and he says, hey, the general expects all his commanders to live on base. And I'm like, I just bought a house. I'm not going to sell it. I don't know how to do this. So I call up my mentor, who was from that battalion, and I said, hey, I'm trying to figure out a way to have this discussion with my brand new boss, 2-star general that I've never met, to say, is there any kind of latitude or wiggle room in this? Well, it turns out that this mentor of mine that I've known since I was a lieutenant was best friends with my new boss. I didn't know that. What I didn't want him to do was call him and say, hey, and explain. All I was looking for was for advice. Long and short of it is, it all worked out, and I had my first meeting with my boss. And so I guess the luck and timing aspect of that is, I had no reason to expect that my mentor was going to know my boss. Turns out that they liked each other. He believed what my mentor told him, and I was very fortunate to have a great command for 2 years, and I didn't have to move on base. I got to live in my house.
That's fantastic. When you use those 3 words, luck, skill, and timing, has there ever been a time can you think of a time where maybe there was somebody, there's always those people that, man, there's something about that person. And I mean that in a positive, not, there's something about it. But there's just something about that. They have that it thing. And it could be anything. But how does luck, skill, and timing as a leader play into, as you know your people, and maybe when you have to pick somebody for a certain job or certain duty? For all we know, yeah, you were the third guy to show up that day, but maybe there was a fourth you didn't know about, but there was something about you that whoever assigned you there said, man, there's something. What would a leader, so the question is, what would a leader look for, thinking of luck, skill, and timing? What did you see? What was it that would make you pick somebody? Maybe that's somebody who others maybe wouldn't. And hopefully there was success in that. You picked this person because you just saw something, or was it a feeling? And that they really, people were surprised at how well that individual did.
I think I think it's a business truism that says you hire for attitude and you train for skill. So most of the folks that I have learned from have a really good attitude. I had a good chance. I had a great tour as an instructor at the Naval Academy, and one of the guys that we brought in he was pretty average, good grades, everything else, but nothing outstanding. And the hockey coach went to the basketball coach and he said, "Hey, what's it going to take to bring this guy in as a student at the Naval Academy?" And the basketball coach says, "2 hockey sticks," and they did, and they brought him in. And that guy graduated 5th in the class, was captain of the hockey team, and is now a neurosurgeon for the Navy. So, to me, a lot of it is just the attitude that you bring to it, and then it's, if we don't treat everybody the same in that what works for David Deary is going to work for Dan Conley, as long as you accept that, there are different approaches for different people, I think you can achieve a lot of things that maybe might not have been there before. And I think that kind of rolls into a bit of if you appeal to the right skills that someone has, and not try and force them into some kind of box, I think you find you have some pretty good results.
Yeah, that's so true, Dan. Well, unfortunately, we're about out of time. It goes so fast, and it's so interesting. But I want to be sensitive to the listeners as well. But before we escape, and this fits right into the topic of luck, and you can't go back to your earlier story, but we all get lucky by bad decisions sometimes. So you're like, man, I dodged that bullet. For me personally, I made a decision once. We were underway. We were performing an exercise, and we were tracking a drone, and we were taking the drone out with one of our surface-to-air missiles. And I did not pay attention to what we were doing as far as the time, and it was time to change the crypto. And so I took down the circuit at the time that we were supposed to shoot it down. And the captain was the tactical action officer. So I learned, I was like, ooh, I dodged that bullet. That could have gone bad real quick, but it didn't. So any lucky mistake you ever got away with?
As a squadron commander, so lieutenant colonel, I did not work hard enough on the relationship that I had with my sergeant major. He was a good man, but he was an infantry marine, and this was a combat service support unit, so he was a little bit out of his element. And there was just some friction that shouldn't have been there. We ended up deploying to Iraq, deploy the whole 600-person squadron there. And I was very fortunate to have an XO that was a phenomenal leader and a great guy, very much of a people person, and he was the bridge between my sergeant major and I. We brought everybody over and we brought everybody back, so I'm very grateful for that. Bad leadership that I got away with was I was not focused enough on building that relationship with my sergeant major, my senior enlisted leader, that I think would have made for a stronger unit, because I was expecting him to come to me, and I probably didn't learn as much as I could have out of that command.
Yeah, but I'm sure you remembered that for your future tours with that relationship with your sergeant majors.
I've had phenomenal sergeants major since then, and I've enjoyed getting to know every single one of them. So yeah, I've been very lucky.
Very good. Well, Dan, once again, I want to thank you for joining today, for sharing a little bit about who you are and your some lessons on luck through a 34-year career. All the best to you and your family as you start, not a new chapter, but a new book in this life on this side of the blue line. For everyone else, thank you again for tuning in. I'm David Deary with the Enlisted Leadership Foundation. This has been another edition of Lead On, Lessons from Military Leaders. You just got done listening to General Dan Conley as we explored the topic of leadership and the role that luck plays in leadership. Until next time, lead on.
Produced by Podcast Architects.